Welcome back to our Northfield Handicapping Seminar to go over the Belmont Stakes card. And this is the 156th Belmont Stakes, and it's run at Saratoga this year for $2 million, presented by Naira Bets. Grade 1 race, mile and a quarter this year, not a mile and a half, so not maybe the true test of the champion, but nonetheless a super field of 10 that's put together. And we'll just run through every horse, I guess.
Let's go.
So, number 1, Seize the Gray. Jamie Torres, your Preakness winner, comes in, gets the rail. Shocked a lot of people, I think, last start in the Preakness. Maybe one that was flying under the radar went off just under 10-1 and went right down the road.
Well, he got good, obviously, in Derby Day, but not in the Derby, in the Pat Day Mile. And then he carried that form over to into the Preakness, and maybe he didn't get enough respect. They let him lope along on the lead, and the way the track's playing today, he's going to go from the one hole, so he's definitely a big threat in this race.
Now, this is one of just 2 horses that technically ran in all 3 legs. He ran on Derby weekend in the Pat Day Mile. Didn't go the mile and a quarter that Mystic Dan went, but nonetheless, he ran in both races, so he'll go all 3 weekends, and he's got the rail.
Sure.
Move on to the 2, Resilience, Junior Alvarado. 6th place finish in the Kentucky Derby, was close to a pace. Top of the stretch, maybe looked like he was taking the lead, and then ultimately flattened out, but he was one of the ones that was very close to that pace.
Yeah. Ever since the Wood Memorial used to be the #1 prep race for the Derby, now it's just like nobody does anything out of the Wood Memorial. So I'm not too high on this horse. I know he had some trouble in the Derby. He finished 6th, got beat 7 lengths, but he's not on my ticket.
I know a couple people that like Resilience. I have a good friend that likes him. I don't.
No.
He was close to the fast pace, but ultimately I didn't like him going into the Derby. I'm not going to like him now.
Right.
On to the Kentucky Derby winner, runner-up in the Preakness, so unfortunately no Triple Crown in the line, but this horse that raced very well in the Preakness, Mystic Dan. I'm not sure what to think of this horse because they said they didn't want to run in the Preakness necessarily because they didn't want to run on 2 weeks because they said the last time they did it didn't work last year in the Smarty Jones, and then, or excuse me, not in the Smarty Jones, in the allowance race at Churchill before the Smarty Jones, and then he came back and raced well. And now he's going to do it again off 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So if they were concerned that time, aren't you concerned now that he doesn't want to go on short rest?
I read it the same way you do. He's not going to be on my exacta tickets, let's put it that way. Maybe he peaked in the Derby. He got the ride of a lifetime. He saved every inch of ground. He was game to the wire. He could have caved in a little bit earlier and not won by a nose. But I think maybe they've gone to the well one too many times with him.
And I don't want to take anything away from the horse. He raced extremely well, and I'm not going to say that he ran the 3rd best race because I do think he ran the best race. He was right on top of the pace, and he was the only horse that stayed around, and he hung on to win.
Right.
But he's going to be glued to the fence. So if you look for a horse skimming the paint, it's going to be Brian Hernandez on Mystic Dan.
Right.
Number 4, the Wine Steward, the beaten favorite runner-up to Antiquarian, who draws outside of him from the Peter Pan. So the 1-2 runners come back here. In fact, the 1-2-3 runners out of the Peter Pan, which is a prolific prep race for the Belmont each and every year. Last year's winner, Arcangelo, won the Peter Pan, then went on to win the Belmont, of course. So it's definitely a race that usually you want the horses out of. And I like both of these runners. I ended up using the 5 Antiquarian, but the 4, the Wine Steward, he had every chance, I thought, and the Antiquarian just beat him square on the number.
I'm not using him, but I got to respect him because look at his record. He's been out 6 times. He got 3 wins in 3 seconds. He's always knocking on the door. In fact, I better put him in on some exacta tickets because who knows? He's got speed. Track's going to be favoring him, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the winner of the 5, Antiquarian, that was a nice performance to get up and beat the Wine Steward, who was supposed to beat him. He was the favorite. Antiquarian continues to get better each and every start, and if he takes another step forward, he certainly fits right in this group. I'm going to use him second here behind I'm going to use the favorite. We'll talk later, but Antiquarian, I'm using second. If he takes another step forward, I think he's right there with these.
The Peter Pan Stakes has been a great stepping stone for the Belmont Stakes. I started my career as a reporter, a daily newspaper at a place called the Willoughby News Herald. It was owned by a guy named Harry Horvitz. One of my assignments was to watch his son in high school do hunters and jumpers out in Lake County. That son is Peter Horvitz, and he's part of Centennial Farm, so there's an Ohio connection to Antiquarian who you got to respect.
It's the hunch play for you.
Yes, you're right.
Number 6, Dornock, I know was a horse that both of us did not like when we talked about the Kentucky Derby a month ago, but I watched the replay a lot of times about this horse, and if there was a horse that had the most trouble, it was Dornock. Dornock was pinballed, shuffled, last. He had the rail. Just draw a line through the race, forget about it. And the fact that he still finished 10th, he had every reason to finish 20th there and just give up. I know he's beaten 18 lengths, but he's going to be 20-1 in this spot, and he was only beaten by Sierra Leone 5 lengths back. all the way back in that bluegrass. So maybe 2 months, maybe he's improved a couple lengths. And if I like Sierra Leone, why not use Dornoch at a good price? Just drawing a line through the Derby, I think that was completely not himself. And from the rail, he just had no chance.
Well, after the bluegrass, where they tried to rate him, Danny Gargan, the trainer, says, we're going to give him his head in the Derby. Maybe he got his head handed to him, and he couldn't give him his head leaving there. I guess if he wins, I'm going to just scratch my head and go to the 13th race, which I don't want to do. But you're using him, I got to respect him. I know one thing, Luis Saez, when he gets his mind on going, he's going. So he's going to read this track bias today, and Dornoch will be among the early pace setters, I would imagine, no?
Yeah, I would assume he's forwardly placed here, assuming he breaks well. I'm not saying he's going to win in this spot, but at 20-1, I would be upset at myself if it ran 9-6 and I didn't have it.
Right.
So
oh, boy.
I'll use him. It's number 7, Protective. Another one out of the Peter Pan. He finished 3rd in there behind Antiquarian and the Wine Steward. 3rd place finish in the Wood Memorial. 2 starts back. So this is a horse that hasn't won yet. He's the maiden.
He's a maiden.
3 straight 3rd place finishes, Wood Memorial and Peter Pan. So he's been stakes tested and he's been right there. He just seems like he needs to take a step forward here. But he's 1 of 2 for Mike Rapoli.
I know. And, yeah, I wonder why he's in here. Why would you run a maiden? Bring him to the Ohio Derby for $500,000 if you want to take a shot with a maiden.
Why not?
Now, if he's counterfeit, then that doesn't bode well for Antiquarium, right, and the Wine Steward. So I'm having a hard time using a maiden in the Belmont Stakes. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. Number 8, Honor Marie. This horse I know you liked in the Kentucky Derby. Unfortunately, the trip didn't work out. He was 20th onto the backstretch.
I know.
He was last. You get the rider change here. You get Florent Giroux, a little more experience. Not that the other guy...
He broke his collarbone. That's why he's off.
Okay.
Otherwise, he'd have had the mount, probably.
So you get the rider change to a little more experience in the United States of Florent Giroux. He's won plenty of big races. Benjamin Curtis, unfortunately the trip didn't work out for him in his first Kentucky Derby, but this is a horse that had to come from last, and there was nowhere for him to go. It was too far. He finished 2nd in the Louisiana Derby, 2 back, so I'll let you talk about him.
Well, you talk about your horse, Dornoch, not having the most traffic. Here's the quote from the trainer of Honor Marie. He had more horses stopping in front of him in the Derby. He found all the trouble, all of it.
Yeah.
So he'll debate you about who had the worst trip.
It is clearly, to me, those two.
Right.
You could argue nobody else had more trouble than those 2 horses.
Right.
So, and they're both come back here.
Right. But we got to take the worst of it again, not traffic-wise, but pace-wise, unless this track changes between now and 6:40 what?
6:47, I believe.
If it doesn't change and give closers a better shot, I'll
He's
be
just
ripping up tickets again.
So disadvantageous against the pace here in this spot.
Yes.
He's going to have to come. He was probably going to be 10th.
Speaking of disadvantageous, let's go to the 9.
Yeah, this is a horse that in the Kentucky Derby was 17th, and he was jostling down the stretch with Forever Young, and part of that photo, that epic last 16th of a mile in the Kentucky Derby that, race fans want every year, and he raced well. He's only a nose away from being 5 for 5. He lost in the Kentucky Derby and the Remsen to Dornoch. But again, he's going to come from so far behind, but you get the rider change, and they're putting blinkers on, so they're trying to figure out those little quirks that he has down the stretch. Sierra Leone, if he puts it all together, I think that this is the horse.
Well, he's been wearing blinkers, but it's Gaffleone off.
Sorry, Gaffleone to
Pratt.
And switching the rider, trying to figure out that quirk.
Right.
They changed the bit. I'm sorry, that's what it was. They changed the bit in his mouth.
Because he keeps lugging in. He keeps leaning in. In fact, he probably should have been disqualified. Gaffleone's whip
I needed him to be second, but I agree.
I know. Gaffleone's whip was underneath Forever Young's chin.
Yeah.
Nearing the wire. It cost Gaffleone the mount. Chad Brown is laying it on the jock, and they gave the mount to Pratt, who's pretty darn good.
And then they make the equipment change with the bit. I meant to say bit, not blinkers.
Yeah, well, so why didn't he change the... He's been lugging in his whole career, so that's the one's on Chad Brown.
That one's on Chad, but you know what? If he thinks... I'm going to trust the guy that's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame one day, that's the change that he needs, and you get the rider change, and again, he's definitely against the pace flow of the race, but so was he in the Kentucky Derby, and he still almost got there.
So can we have an 8-9 box here? I don't care which one gets you. Just make sure they're 8-9 or 9-8. Yeah, right, exactly.
And then we'll move to the number 10, Mindframe. Very talented son of Constitution. He's shown nothing but ability, but now he steps up. This is much, much deeper waters than he's been facing.
Right.
He's 2 for 2. Only 2 horses in the last 8 years have won grade 1 races off only 2 starts, so in their 3rd career start. One of them was Charlatan. The other one was Justify. So
what Kenny says is this horse debuted at Gulfstream
I was there
March,
that day.
And he just won for fun. And then they brought him up and they ran him on Derby Day at Churchill Downs in an optional claiming allowance race. And once again, he just loped around there. So he's unbeaten, 2 for 2. But like he says, he's untested. He's got a ton of speed.
He's got a ton of speed. This is the first time he has to go off Lasix, too. I know a lot of people don't talk about that
you're right.
as much, but every other horse in here has been racing off Lasix. He's not been, so this is the first start where he's off Lasix, and usually that does mean sometimes that maybe they don't run as good, especially the first time. So I just thought there were a lot of question marks with him. Third start, going 1.25 miles against a really deep field of talented 3-year-olds. I left him off my ticket.
And I think he's
I
cold.
certainly wouldn't be shocked.
No, and I think he's cold in the betting
He's
right
like
now.
7 or 8 to 1.
Yeah, so people aren't jumping in yet. Right.
Although I guess if you look at his 2 running lines, and if he won at 8 to 1, you'd probably be kicking yourself when it's all said and done.
Get a saver, folks. Get a saver.
That's it. There you go. I got 9-5-6 in the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes.
And I have 8-9-1. I missed the Derby. I missed the Preakness, so I think I'm eligible for free government cheese if I don't hit the Belmont. So there we are.
There you go. There's the handicapping seminar from the Belmont Stakes. Best of luck in all your wagers. Tonight at Northfield is the $200,000 Battle of Lake Erie, so be sure to tune in to Northfield Park tonight. Best of luck.